Perfect. And we are going to wait a couple minutes. Thank you, everybody, for those who joined super early, super on time. And we are about to start. All right. So as you can see, Asocopy has many special things for you in the following months. Of course, we have our national and international conference coming soon. We invite you to participate in this conference that is from the Global South, our Roots, Perspectives, and Transformations. The conference will take place at Universidad de Caldas in the beautiful city of Manizales from October 12th to the 14th. So remember to book your plane tickets, your hotel, and everything so we can see you in Manizales. We are also going to start very soon our Diplomado Teaching English to Youngsters as part of the series of Diplomados that we offer that last 12 weeks. And they have a certificate and a group of experts to help you enhance not only your practices, but also your communicative competence. And today, it is my pleasure to introduce one of our very special guest for many different reasons, Dr. Juan Rios. Give me one second. Dr. Juan Rios Vega, who's going to present a webinar called Using Digital Storytelling to Enhance Language Development and as a Reflective Task in a Teacher Education Program. Dr. Juan Rios Vega is an associate professor in the Department of Education, Counseling, and Leadership at Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois. His areas of research include teaching English to multilingual learners, cultural responsive pedagogies, and social justice and education. Dr. Juan Rios is a very special friend of our house, of Asocopy. He's one of our international key speakers, our note speakers in Manizales this year. We are very happy to invite you. And of course, if this is not the time, then when? He is an author, he is a writer. Here I have my book. I have to show it because last year he was so generous, and this is my book. This is El Niño Hada, Carlos, the fairy boy. It's beautiful. If you still don't have it, it has a signature and everything. So may this be the time to brag with his some of his writing. Is beautiful. I have to tell you, it's touching, it's moving, and I am very happy to have you here, Juan. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and for sharing all you have to share in this very special moment of your career, of your life, with everything that is happening. So welcome.
Well, Adriana, you're amazing. You're gonna make me cry now, and I haven't even started talking. So thank you so very much for having me as part of this series of webinars in Colombia and now in the world, because this is gonna be posted and many people will be able to watch this later. But like Adriana said, well, my name is Juan Rios Vega. I'm a professor at Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois, and I'm also an active participant to ASACOP's annual conferences. And I can proudly say that I have many friends in Colombia now due to ASACOP's conferences. So I'm delighted to be a guest speaker tonight, this afternoon, whenever you watch this webinar. So yeah, I'm also a writer, like Adriana mentioned, and I have two children's books, but I also have some academic books that deal with issues of how Latinx students deal with different systems of oppression, such as racism, classism, lingualism, and some other isms in the United States, right? So, but today, what I'm going to do, first of all, I will start sharing my PowerPoint. Hold on just a second. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So, and let me start by, okay, hold on just a second, because sometimes, hold on just a second here, slideshow. Okay, here we go. So the title of my presentation is Using Digital Storytelling to Enhance Language Development and as a Reflective Task in Teaching Education. And I have to start by telling you that I am a former ESL teacher. I taught ESL, English as a second language, in North Carolina for over 16 years before I moved to Peoria, where I'm currently a professor. So I have some type of background knowledge teaching English language learners, middle school, high school, and college. I also taught refugees from Central America and many countries around the world, such as Africa and some Asian countries. So what I'm going to share with you here is I want to try to kill two birds with one stone. First, I want to talk to you about how to use digital storytelling with your students if you're a teacher, a K-12 teacher. But then I will also share with you how I'm using digital storytelling with my current students. Currently, I prepare student teachers. Most of my students are women, and I have to use color here because I'm a critical race scholar. So to me, issues of race and class within the U.S. context are meaningful and important because that's something that we need to address. I don't know if we talk about issues of race and racism in our countries enough, like we do within the U.S. So I have to say that most of my students are women, most of them are white, and most of them are middle class, come from middle class backgrounds. So for you to have an idea where I'm coming from and the importance of using this type of strategy to support students who do not belong to the group that they're going to be teaching. So most of my students, like I mentioned, are women, are white, middle class, upper middle class, but they will be teaching students whose first language is other than English, which means most of the students are going to be students of color, right? So that's for you to have kind of like a background information about where I'm coming from with my presentation. First, I will be talking to you how to use this strategy in the classroom with English language learners, but then I will tell you how I'm currently using this strategy to support my student teachers. So all of us are storytellers, to be honest, and this idea of storytelling within a Latin American country is music to our ears because we have been storytellers since we were born. We learn or heard stories from our parents and grandparents since we were children. So a little bit of definition about this. We are storytelling creatures who use stories to do many essential things, like teach practical skills, build communities, entertain ourselves, make peace in the world, and cultivate a sense of personal identity. Absolutely, technologies come along, but stories are forever. So we're storytellers by nature, but now in this presentation, I will also introduce the use of technology to enhance, to better present our stories. But first I want to show you a product, right? I didn't want you to wait to the end to see what is it that I'm talking about. So I want to show you this project that one of my students created last year. She's a Latinx student, born in Ecuador, and then she moved to the Chicago area when she was a little girl. And now she's actually she graduated this past May as a math teacher, as a middle school math teacher. So let's see what she did, and then I go over the theoretical frameworks and how we can use this to support English language learners. So let's see.
I'm not sure if you shared audio, Juan.
Okay, so how did I do that?
You stop sharing and you start sharing again. And before you share, in the lower part, there is a little box that says
Okay.
share my computer audio.
Okay, so let me see. Stop sharing.
Share again. And when you share, in the lower part, it says share sound. You need to click on a box.
Say that again. Share. Okay,
Share
I did
sound.
share. Multiple participants.
In the lower part.
Okay, hold on. I'm lost. Share screen.
Yeah, and down it says a screen whiteboard, and in the lower part there is a little box that you just need to check, put a check mark that says share sound.
Got it.
Good.
So can you see my screen? No.
Yes.
Let me find.
Learned a lot.
Perfect.
And
Yes.
I've been able to
Yes.
do a lot of reflections. And one of the things that brought me to was creating my own philosophy for this class. I believe in emphasizing patience and guidance to students. I believe that we must understand what students are going through in order to help them succeed in school. I had the opportunity to interact with Serena during the fall semester of 2021. My cooperating teacher had assigned to me to work with her in math and English assignments she had fallen behind in. My CT had informed me that Serena requires a little extra push in order to complete her work. She also mentioned to not let Serena do other work than what was assigned, especially on her phone. With that in mind, I had an assumption that the student was going to cause a little trouble. But in reality, I was extremely incorrect. The first interaction with Serena proved to me how smart she was in math. She would start every math problem with, "No sé cómo trabajar este problema." I don't know how to solve this math problem. And I would take a deep breath because I knew she knew how to solve the problem. She just required that extra little push. However, I knew that if I was frustrated, she would be able to see it and it would allow her to not complete her work because I had given up. But that wasn't the case because I knew with patience and guidance, she would be able to complete the math problems. There were times where she would get frustrated with the problems and start to shut down. Luckily, I've had the same experience when solving math problems that I was able to guide her in what she should do first. Once she knew what to do first, she would solve the problem in less than a minute. I quickly learned that she was unsure of how to start a problem or an assignment until one day I came into class and she said, "Estoy lista para comenzar este problema de math." Which translate, I'm ready to start some math problems. And it surprised me. I was so happy that she was ready to take the first step without needing my guidance. I asked.
Okay, I will stop the video here. Just give me 1 second. If I know how to do this, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. I'm so sorry. Okay, hold on. Okay, I got it. Okay, can you see the screen now?
No yet.
Okay.
There you are.
Okay. Yeah, so what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna be switching back and forth with this video because since I tend to talk a lot, I didn't want to miss showing you this video that one of my former students created before she completed her ESL endorsement. And And it will probably make sense later on as I move on with my presentation. But I think it's important for the audience to understand what we mean by digital natives and digital immigrants. And as you already know, well, today students K through college, they are probably the first generation to grow up with this new technology. Most of the children that enter our schools nowadays come with this technology chip within themselves. I mean, those of us who are from other generations are having a hard time sometimes to use the computer, but kids nowadays are so used to video cams, cell phones, and all other toys and tools of the digital age. Then research says that over what students spend over 10,000 hours, I would probably say more, playing video games, or now most of them are TikTokers, right? In the past, it was video games. Now we have tons of TikToks, Snapshots, Instagram, and you name it, and they keep growing, right? So those students are called native digital natives because they are born with this digital era, right? So now we, the instructors, sometimes become like digital immigrant instructor because we have, updated information about how to use technology to enhance students' education. So it could be daunting for some of us because we're not so used to technology. And the sad thing is that by the time we learn how to use something, technology has already changed probably overnight. So I think it's important to understand the difference between digital natives and digital immigrants. So new generations are digital natives. Older people like me are probably digital immigrants, right? So what does digital mean? So digital refers to literally anything associated with information, age, and story. It means that so many things to do, so many people that it defies strict definition. So digital is basically about technology. So, and then digital storytelling is the use of personal digital technology to combine a number of media into a coherent narrative. Like the example that you saw on my student, she wrote a story that happened to her when she was doing her practicum, and then she used her voice. After she wrote the script, she used her voice, she read it aloud, she voice recorded herself, and then she also included some images and also some background music. But I will go more into details in a second about what she did. And then just to mention a little bit about my own story, I was born and raised in Panama, Central America. And then I moved to the city of my country when I was 17 to pursue higher education. Then I moved to the States 23 years ago, and I have been living in between North Carolina and now Illinois for the past 23 years. And like I mentioned earlier, I am a former high school, middle school teacher, college student teacher, and now I'm a university professor. So that's a little bit of my background. This picture on the left are my current students at Bradley University, and those ones in the right eye from my former students when I was a high school teacher. They were performing the Peach Boy. You have heard about this, you probably know. This is a Japanese folk tale, very, very famous. Here, my students were performing that in the classroom. Beautiful memories. So why do we use digital storytelling in the classroom with English language learners? Well, English language learners benefit from reinforcement of vocabulary and concepts through pictures, graphics, and videos. So it's a different way for them to learn. It's not so strict. It's not like the teacher knows the answer. It is more student-centered. Students also background information. What we also call this funds of knowledge, instead of we, the teachers, telling them exactly what to do. And then the use of technology. Most students nowadays, digital students are so used to all these gadgets, and so technology is a win-win for teachers. Technology also helps English language learners to find a voice, which helps them ease the transition in learning a new language. Sometimes students do not like to see themselves in front of the camera. Sometimes the students don't like to hear how they sound. So sometimes using technology allows the students to step out of the comfort zone and to speak up, and also to be creative. It also helps students to learn as much as possible and to demonstrate that knowledge we need to fully and creatively use what advances in technology have to offer. So sometimes students, or sometimes most of the time students are the ones who update their instructors about technology stuff, because that's what they do 24/7. So It's also, again, a good way for students to demonstrate the creativity and how to use technology in a different way. In this case, learning a new language, but also learning content. So what is digital storytelling? Traditionally, storytelling itself is an oldest form of education, and it has been a form of communicating throughout human history. So, and it has been a way to educate children to be literate, right? So, for example, I was just watching recently some of my favorite children's books that have been, I don't know how, recorded on using videos and stuff like that. So teachers reading out loud, recording themselves reading those famous books that children, we have read for generations. So also storytelling digitally, I know early is called digital storytelling, which is a kind of practice on using computer and multimedia assisted tools in order to tell stories to others. So from a teacher standpoint, I think using digital storytelling also helps us because we record or record our lessons and we just present it to our students over and over, so we don't have to kind of like reinvent the wheel. So we save those materials for future classes. In digital stories, there are a set of multimodal aspects and components included, such as visual images, which is important, especially because most English language learners, including myself, are visual learners. So having visuals, realia for students to look at, also allows them to learn English in a very less threatening way. It also has written text. Students develop their reading skills and also the writing skills, recorded audio narration. Sometimes students are afraid or shy to read or to talk in front of their peers because of how the way they sound, etc. Here, they can record their voices and they don't necessarily have to be seen on the screen. And the video clips and the segments, which, you know, they also use their creativity to find videos online or so sometimes so short videos to include other stories. So digital storytelling in foreign language learning, which is the core of our presentation. In second language learning, digital storytelling can indeed be a good vehicle to increase in language performance, in that it has a potential to provide motivation, important, and I will probably include here also engagement to students by being reflective learners of their own learning experiences, put that way. Using technology. In reading and writing sessions, English language learners can have more creative opportunities if provided with sounds, music, graphics, images, and animations, which expand them to express their creativity. And I think I will also include here the word imagination. You know, teaching English language learners, especially children, the use of their imagination is a plus here, especially when we are teaching them things such as poetry or music, etc. So imagination and creativity go hand in hand. Also, students can share their own stories through digital storytelling in ways that other than just plain text, so that they can think more creatively and critically. And this is important because this idea that students do not have any type of, information or knowledge that they can share in the classroom with other peers is dated. That is no longer used, especially within the US context. We use all the opposite. We use students' funds of knowledge, language or languages, also as assets in the classroom for them to learn a new language, and also to share whatever content they learn in their native language or languages can also be translated into the English language. So like I always tell my students, knowledge is knowledge no matter where it comes from. Students can read something in Spanish, for example, and that knowledge can be translated into English, and the same child can have the same information in 2 or more languages. And using technology is a win-win here with that one. So learners are expected to have more chances for collaboration and cooperation, work with each other to digital storytelling. And I think I've seen this in the past with my students. When you ask them to develop a digital storytelling project as a group, as a community. So it's very interesting to see them sharing and negotiating knowledge and language as well. So, which is good for teachers because then you're not the only one assessing them. They're also assessing themselves. They're also scaffolding each other. And then your job as a teacher is just to monitor what you hear and also to prompt them with questions, see how much they know about the lesson, okay? So also, what are some of the key points behind digital storytelling? Using the TESOL context, most of us know about TESOL. So digital storytelling is a means for both teaching and practicing multimedia literacy, which is also embedded in the TESOL curriculum. Digital storytelling can be tailored to effectively deliver specific content for learning. And I will also mention that in a second, how you can use digital storytelling to assign different theme and contents, okay? Success with digital storytelling comes solidly from being able to make meaning from experience. Something that the student can retell you. For example, tell me about your favorite experience in the classroom with your teacher, for example, and then the student had to tell you or retell you the story, and then you include technology with that story, and that's it. You don't have, if it is kind of basic, you can use it that way. If you want the students to be more specific, to teach how to prepare something, you want the student to summarize the part of history, etc. So that's a little bit different, but digital storytelling can be used in multiple ways, from everyday situations to a more content-appropriate one. Then in the EFL and ESL students, students work with images and text to create a digital story, develop digital literacy, media literacy, and visual literacy skills. And I will mention that in a second. So what you can see so far, and have brought different pieces from different resources that talk about the use of digital storytelling, especially in English language learners. So what can they do? They can use digital storytelling to write personal narratives, the ones I mentioned earlier. They can also use it to write historical events or themes. They can also use it to write or to inform or to instruct other people how to do something. In the past, my students have to present some projects like how to cook something, how to put something together, how to paint, how to decorate, and then we videotape that. And that also they have to tell us a story behind it. By that time, we didn't use digital storytelling as we use it nowadays with the students, but that was just kind of like similar, but we didn't call it at that time when I was teaching. When I first got to the US, we didn't call it digital storytelling. We just call it just a presentation by itself, okay? Something else about how to use digital storytelling to enhance language learning. It assists to develop several language skills, such as reading, because they have to read the script, and also writing because they have to write it when storyboarding, and speaking and listening during collaboration in narration. So again, you can see here that they use the 4 language domains: reading and writing, speaking and listening, and also vocabulary. It also allows students to develop their vocabulary repertoire. I already mentioned that. It also encourages students to share ideas, collaborate in picture selection, communicate and engage in unique, authentic experiences while working in groups. Again, if you as a teacher decide that the students can do this as a group, right? But also teachers can ask students to do this individually. That depends on how proficient the students are in the new language, or if the students prefer to work on their own, right? But working in groups, I think it is a very interesting way to support students, because they can negotiate and they can collaborate. It also transfers their understanding to words, such as words, text, images, and music, which is interesting because students have different tastes, for music, and they have different ideas about what to put, what not to put as part of the background music. But it's always interesting how they also developed some communicative skills, right? How to get along with each other, especially after the pandemic. Also, how to craft a digital story. I will just mention this pretty quickly because of time, because I want to spend more time talking about what I do with my students as a professor. So stage 1, define, collect, decide. Stage 2, select, import, create. And then stage 3, decide, write, record, and finalize. That's when the students are ready to put together their script. They write the script and they narrate the script, right? And then stage 4, demonstrate, evaluate, and replicate. Share the digital story with colleagues, gather feedback on how best to further develop, expand, and implement the digital story in the classroom, et cetera, et cetera. But this depends on the instructor, how you want to address this. But this, I will be sharing this PowerPoint. I will leave it with Adriana and Katie, So in case you want to go back and just read all of these stages, and you have a question, you can reach out to me after, and I will be more than happy to support you or to give you some feedback about how I did this for my students in the real world. And then these are some of the resources that you can check. If you use an Android and your computer, some websites that you can use. Most of my students in the States use this website with video, which I think is, you can get some minutes for free, but it is teacher friendly and student friendly. My students use this because, and I have to be honest with you, if the student is not computer savvy, sometimes transforming their narration into a movie could be frustrating for some students. So, but I think with video is an easy one. I usually use it most of the time because it is kind of like easy for me to use. And some of my students have used this in the past. So it's kind of easy. And also you can watch some YouTube videos of how to use with video, which also helps a lot. So more about video editing. Again, they use with video here a lot, with video here a lot. So, so I would highly recommend you to use with video to voice record your project, or you as a students to do it, and also to bring your voice and then the images and then the music, etc., right? So, and these are the music resources. I think sometimes students have access to more of these, music websites for free than we do. So just be careful with copyright law here. But if it is something that you're going to be using in the classroom with the students, I don't see it as a problem. But always do your homework so you don't want the students to get in trouble. Okay. So, and then some assessments considerations for using digital storytelling in the classroom. Always set clear goals, clear expectations. Like I did at the beginning of this presentation, show the students examples so they know what you expect them to do. Assess the story. I think it's important. In my experience, I usually proofread the stories first. I reemphasize what is it that I want the students to do. I always tell them your story has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? And then I go over that with my students. Assess all the artifacts students create to develop the detailed story, especially the written word. Absolutely, because you want to make sure that what they wrote is grammatically correct, right? Also encourage the students to practice reading, which also allows them to develop fluency, right? Assess student planning and process, yes, step by step, monitor what they're doing so nobody is left behind. Assess media grammar and student use of media, yes, especially if you are going to share your students' product, just make sure that you want them to shine, which is great. From a teacher standpoint, just make sure that you double check what they have written or typed, right? Assess student understanding and presentation of content, yes, especially if it is a theme such as history, geography, science, et cetera, et cetera. Assess student teamwork and use of resources, yes. In the past, I used to give my students some assignments when they work in groups. That saves a lot of time. Instead of just asking the students to work together, and sometimes there is one student who works the most, and there's only one student who works the least. So I would highly recommend to give students a task. This is what you need to do in this group, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Assess their performance. I think that's also important. When I say assess their performance, you can also ask them questions after they present their detailed storytelling project. Ask them questions about their group work and also how they found out information, if they have to do some research. Provide narrative as well as specific event-based feedback, of course, always a rubric. Use the rubric so the students know they're going to be evaluated based on a rubric. Have students self-assess their projects. This is also important because that also allows the students to be accountable for their jobs. Have students add their digital stories to their digital footprints. Okay, so I use most of these assessment considerations in the past, and let me tell you, they really work for me. So maybe they work for you as well. So let's see. So, and then I will switch now, and I will tell you some of the examples that I used when I was, the examples that I used that I'm currently using, to be honest, as a teacher at Bradley University with my student teachers. Because the first part of my presentation was with students K to 12, but now how I use this with higher education students, right? So before I move on, this is just a storyboarding resource note that the students can use and you can give to students. So it could give them more sense of directions how to use it. So I think there I have a couple of handouts here for you to watch. You can also use story mapping. You use this for something else in the classroom for writing, but you can also use story maps when you want students to develop the script in a chronological way. So I highly recommend story mapping when you want students to do storytelling, right? Those of you who are English teachers, English, when I say English, is English, the subject, right? You probably already know this. If you want to use it with English language learners, of course, it will take a little bit longer, but I have used this with my native speakers, students, and sometimes they have a hard time understanding this, but this allows them to have a sense of direction also, and how to write a good story, right? And then this is more for elementary school kids. Digital storytelling assignment. This is a collaborative activity, right? Students have to summarize story. Also, this is very good. This one is also, but digital storytelling, but this one is using poetry. Maybe some of you already know this poem, Where I'm From, which is an excellent poem. Here I created a rubric to evaluate the student. And now I want to switch gears and tell you how I use this with my college students at Bradley University. Like I mentioned earlier, I prepare student teachers, and they have to complete 100 hours out in the schools. Hello? Am I doing okay?
Everything is fine.
Okay, good. So I prepare, like I said, students who are going to be, most of them are going to be elementary school teachers, but they also get an ESL endorsement, which means they have to complete 100 hours in some schools in the area supporting English language learners K through 12. So besides completing the 100 hours, they also need to take core courses that deal with strategies to support English language learners, such as assessment for English language learners, strategies to support English language learners, language development, et cetera, et cetera. So, but the core of this ESL endorsement program is that students spend 100 hours in the schools helping students. And like I mentioned earlier, also, most of my students are predominantly white, middle class, but when we send them out in the community to support students, most of the students that they help are students of color, most of them Latinx students whose first language is, or whose heritage language is Spanish. And some of them do not even speak Spanish as the heritage language, especially students who come from indigenous tribes from Guatemala or Mexico, right? So, but I can talk to you about that later if you are more interested about how do we deal with issues of language when students do not speak Spanish, but they come from countries such as Mexico or Guatemala, right? But I also include this digital storytelling in this practicum. They had to complete 2 semesters, and in the second semester, we call this ETE 240. As part of their final project, they had to create a digital storytelling project. And then what I do is I ask the student to pick a student that they are going to observe. It's like a case study. Basically, it's like a case study. I never tell them case study because sometimes they get scared about that. So I ask them to pick a student that they have to observe when they are doing the practicum, that they have to become close to, that they have to support a student. They have to support all English language learners, but they have to focus on one particular student to develop this project. So I want to skip.
A teacher
Okay.
is not a teacher.
This is another example of what my student did. Can you hear this one?
Without students.
Yes?
Yes, it's perfect.
Yes. Okay, great. So before I show you this, my students, one thing that I ask my students to do is they have to pick their philosophy of teaching. What is it that you find in education that can, what is it that you find in this quote or philosophy that is going to guide your teaching instruction when you become a teacher? So for some students, this is kind of hard because it is kind of like philosophical. What does that mean? I said, well, when you're going for a job interview, chances are that somebody's going to ask you, what is your philosophy of teaching? And then for them, it's a first time that here's the thing because it is philosophy, right? And sometimes we have a hard time using philosophy to question things. So the project starts with this. I asked them to pick a motto, a proverb, a saying that deals with education, and that's going to be their philosophy of teaching. So this is what this student did, and let's see what she has to say.
Students are not students without a teacher. Teachers and students need to work together to make the classroom a successful place. A teacher is one of the most important individuals in a child's life. As teachers, we teach children the basics of counting and writing and reading, but more importantly, we teach them how to use social skills. We teach them basic life skills, but one of the most valuable things we teach our students is to believe in themselves and to never stop trying. I believe in never giving up in myself or in a student. A quote by Rita F. Pearson states, "Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best they can possibly be." It's as simple as that, or is it? If a child is struggling, do we let them continue to struggle, or do we rush over to do everything in our power to help them learn? If we're frustrated, do we take it out on the child and make them pay for our problems, or do we stay calm and work through it together? As human beings, we have instincts to give up whenever we can't figure something out. But when it comes to our students, we have to try our best to make students believe in themselves as well. To be a good teacher is to be willing to go the extra mile to help a student, to try every possible solution to help them achieve their goals. We cannot look at a student and give up on them just because of the biases that we have in our life. Before coming to Bradley, I had many biases, but who doesn't? Before going into any ESL classroom, I had the thought in my mind that I would not be able to teach them. I felt like I would have no patience and get stressed out that they didn't know what I was talking about. I felt defeated, and I hadn't even started yet. After being in class and learning how to be a teacher, I have become more patient and understanding of ESL students and all the things that they bring to our classroom. I have learned that you have to be an advocate for them and to believe in them every step of the way. If they don't understand, you have to keep teaching the concept until they get it. We have to be their motivation to keep moving forward. We have to tell them that it will all be okay and that we will not give up on them no matter what. Being a teacher means you're pushing the child to achieve their goals and their aspirations with everything you have. Telling a child that you will never give up on them is something that all children want to hear. If you are having a rough day and are not understanding a concept, a teacher must make sure they make time out of their day to help them accomplish whatever they are doing. When I was younger, if I was told, "I give up on you, you cannot do this," then I would have felt defeated and dumb. I would have thought I was not good enough, and I would have gotten the idea in my head that it doesn't matter if I do my work because, like my teacher said, I can't do it. Whenever I hear a student say, "I can't do this," I get an achy feeling in me. They are giving up on themselves before they even ask for help or try to figure out a solution. I immediately go to them and tell them, "Yes, you can." Then I help them figure out what is wrong and how to fix it. When in a bilingual class, the student couldn't quite understand what I was asking him to do or the instructions of the assignment. He was getting frustrated, but so was I. I didn't speak Spanish, and so he didn't understand me. He didn't know what the instructions were or why the answer was wrong or anything that I was trying to explain to him. I felt defeated. I eventually tried talking really slow and got a Spanish dictionary out. After a few more times, he understood the problem and he was able to do it. He was so excited, and I was happy that neither of us gave up and we worked together. As teachers, we have to try. We have to try to help the students to the best of our knowledge and ability. We have to try to give them a peace of mind. We have to try to make them change their negative mind. Even though this might not always work, as long as we try and show them that we are not giving up on them, they will start to understand that we know they can do it and they should believe in themselves as much as we believe in them. From observing other teachers and interviewing students on their different cultures, I feel as if I have grown immensely when it comes to teaching ESL students. We have all had the thought in our minds that we want to give up on what we are doing or give up on who we are teaching. After the 10th time of doing something, you get discouraged and just want to throw something. Don't let today's troubles bring you down. Don't let life's little obstacles keep you from trying. Don't let your fears keep you from dreaming. Don't give up for any reason. Believe in yourself. Quoted unknown. What I have learned in my life is to stop, take a break, do something else, and come back to it either later that day or another day. Giving yourself or the student a break on what they are struggling on gives them a chance to recuperate and try to figure out new ways to accomplish troubling tasks. We have classrooms of future nurses, firefighters, engineers, lawyers, doctors, and maybe even the future president. If you give up on a student, then they give up on themselves, and there's no coming back from a student who shuts down. So as teachers, we have to keep a positive attitude, have a smile on our face, and never give up on ourselves or on our students. And one day, we hope that a child will look back at us and think, she never gave up on me, and that is why I am who I am today.
Okay. So you might have some questions for me after about this video and about the student and what she wrote and what she read, right? But just to give you some type of background information about this assignment, sorry, this is too all there, but students have to write I believe essay, and that's what she started with, like, I believe in. And that I believe in comes from a philosophical quote, right? Like I mentioned earlier. And then I give them some examples about some quotes that I got from the website. I discuss that with them. I tell them how many words the essay has to have, etc. And then they have to turn it in. I give them some feedback. I give them some suggestions about how to expand it. Again, I try to make sure that they include a story from a student that they have observed in their practicum. And you heard this one here. They talked about that class that didn't speak in English and she didn't speak in Spanish, and how she made the students feel welcome or accepted, even though there was a language. I don't like to use the word barrier. I prefer to use the word language challenge, because to me, barrier has a negative connotation. And then the third part here is the digital storytelling. And like I mentioned earlier, it is not so easy for some students, especially those who do not like technology. Believe it or not, some students do not like technology. But we work on this together. And the amazing thing is that they also help one another to put this movie together. And then at the end, they have to present this when we are about to finish the semester. And then we talk about what they did. And there's also like a get together, not a party, but a get together. And if you notice on the second video, the student was very reflective about even her own background experience as a student, and how teachers also made an impact in her life, and how she's doing it with her students. Also, you also mentioned, you also heard when she talked about her frustrations when she was in a Spanish-speaking environment, and how she felt that she couldn't be able to be a good teacher. Or she said, use the word defeated even before she became a teacher. So this project also allows the students to become very, very reflective about what does that mean to be a teacher of students who speak another language besides English, right? So there is also a rubric. I created this rubric to evaluate the projects. I also encourage them to use the storyboarding. if they need to. But to be honest, most of my students don't use this. But with English language learners who are not used to this, I would highly recommend you to use this because sometimes they had the idea once they draw. So it's easy for them to put those ideas into paper or into writing. So I think I'm done with my presentation. So these are my contacts in case anybody in this group or later on would like to reach out to me with any questions about what I have done or what worked or what did not work with me when I was using digital storytelling with my students, whether as a former middle school, high school, and college professor or teacher, sorry, and now as a professor teaching student teachers. So these are two books that I marked my two chapters. I have one chapter in each book, sorry. This one is about how to use digital storytelling in the classroom. And this one is how to use the ESL classroom as a shelter place for English language learners in the US. So I will stop sharing in case somebody has any questions for me. I'll be more than happy to answer those. And again, thank you so very much for having me here in Sacramento.
Juan, is amazing. This is very inspiring because we have been talking about the power of stories and the power of like what we can tell our students and what they can tell as well, right? We have always talked about folk tales and we have talked about traditional tales, but there are many stories that our students want to tell, their own story. And there are many other ways in which we can approach our students. I have here, I can see here some of the teachers I work with and some other teachers that I teach at the Especialización and at the Diplomados in Asocopia. Actually, we've been talking a lot about storytelling and what a powerful tool it is and how our students sometimes feel also protected, you know, behind the screen to tell many things and to express many ideas that they wouldn't do in front of an audience. And is that for a long time, we have exposed our students in front of audiences when they are actually not ready. So my question is from the social emotional part, from those trends that our students need to get. Have you felt anything like this in your students that somehow it strengthens their social emotional part?
Yes, absolutely. I think you just mentioned it. It's like some students feel intimidated. They don't want to talk in front of people, especially when we talk about English language learners, because I want to say they get it from I would probably say social media, because they want to sound like a native speaker of English, right? But also we know that little kids, maybe they will pick up the accent that most white Americans do speak. But somebody who is an adolescent or a young adult will not catch that way of speaking. So sometimes they feel like I don't speak like I do. I sound kind of weird. But it only takes one good teacher to validate that student English and to say, you know, like I tell my students in Panama, my student teachers in Panama, where I am right now, preparing some student teachers for this semester as a pro-writer. And I said that your English is a beautiful English. Don't worry about the way it sounds, because as long as there is communication, it's okay. So don't worry about the way you sound. And I try to empower them, like you are bilingual, you speak two languages, you navigate two worlds at the same time. Knowledge is knowledge, no matter which language you read it. You can transfer that knowledge into English and then back into Spanish. So I think that it needs a teacher, a good teacher, a caring teacher that sends that message every day to students. Your English is beautiful. Don't worry about how you sound, because you speak two languages. And then using technology also, yes, allows students to use their imagination, their creativity. But I think that eventually we want the students to speak without any type of, you know, barrier. Like, you know, your English is beautiful, right? Yeah, it takes a good teacher.
Berta Saete says, thank you very much, Dr. Juan Rios. Your lecture was very important to us because we can improve our teaching. Excellent information and materials.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me here.
It was a really, really inspiring talk. Thank you, Juan, for being like so generous with us to share what you're doing and to share what your experiences are regarding this storytelling. Just a little question that has to do with what is the most common problem that you find when you want to have this storytelling integration in the lessons?
Yeah. Well, I think that the most challenging thing sometimes is just to scaffold the students because they want to talk about so many things at the same time. And just to guide them, it's like narrow this down, just one story, one particular story, and just talk about it and use your imagination. What happened? Just tell me the story like you were talking to your best friend. Tell me the beginning, the middle, and the end. That structure is the most difficult one. But once they know exactly what is it that you want, hey, you cannot stop them. They tell me like, I wrote a newspaper, Dr. Rios. I wrote a newspaper and said, okay, let me read that one. Because I like to read their stories. Because also as a teacher, and that's something I also want to mention here tonight, is like as a teacher, this is an excellent way for us to get to know our students. Because one of the students talked about her biases and she said, who is not biased? And she's exactly right. Because even when we assume that the students look like us and talk like us, we don't understand them. We don't really know where they come from. So asking them to write their own stories in a very structured way, right? I mean, you can brainstorm about different things, which is good. But then then you do your teaching part. Okay, let's narrow this down. Let's write a beginning, a middle, and an end. I think that's the hardest part. But once they trust you and they open up and they want to share parts of their life with you, I mean, that's a win-win.
Thank
We have
you.
we
So
have
much.
something else in the chat. Professor Clara Lozano says, helping middle school students reflect upon importance of their background in the development of their own identity. How have you faced that challenge? My students sometimes avoid talking about their family and culture.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think when students, I always tell my students something like, students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Oh, can you say that again?
Students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Wow.
And that is exactly right. When students know that you are a caring teacher, when you care about their lives and their backgrounds and their families and what they do and how they feel and how you make them shine and how you make them feel important, they open up and they tell the stories. And just like, do not criticize them, do not question anything. Just take them as a privilege, like this child has found and needs somebody he or she or they can trust and talk about these things. I have stories from students that some students tell me like, don't tell anybody about this. Don't tell my parents about this. Of course, if they were in danger, I had to talk to parents, but there were some things like teenage things, like I'm in love, I'm dating this girl, I'm dating this boy, or my parents don't want me to date this boy, this girl. Yes, and now as the professor here in Panama, I mean, I have talk about issues of, race and class and all those things. And I have indigenous children or young adults in Panama that have come to me to share some anecdotes and experiences with issues of race and racism as an indigenous person. And I was like, oh, this is great because this is important for us to be this welcoming person or that is there to listen to the students, right? Don't criticize them, just listen to them and just feel privileged that that child has found in you somebody he or she or they can trust.
Thank you very much, Juan. I am amazed. I really love listening to you reading. I follow kind of a groupie. I was telling Katie, I have my book here with me. I'm so happy that we have one today.
Yes, we are very lucky to have these books, and we strongly recommend you to get Juan's books. They are amazing. They are really, really nice.
Oh, thank you so much.
To use them in our classes. It is inspiring and very helpful.
Yeah, and bilingual, by the way. They're bilingual.
Bilingual. Oh
Yes,
yes,
I was
that's very
about to say that,
important.
it's bilingual.
I teach Spanish as a new language here in Colombia,
Mm.
and I've been reading Carlos the Fairy Boy with my class, and it's a bilingual group, and they just love, and they compare the words and the images, and they feel
Oh, that's good. That's good.
it's very nice. So Juan, we want to thank you very much. We want to remind everybody Juan is going to be one of our keynote speakers this year in
Yes.
Manizales.
Woo-hoo.
And we will be seeing you in Manizales. And before we go, just some more advertisement about our next webinar. Remember that we are having them on the last Thursday every month. Our next webinar also has an international guest, which is Diego Ojeda. Diego Ojeda is going to talk to us about creativity in the foreign language classroom. He's a Colombian teacher who has lived for almost 20 years in the States also, and he's an ambassador of our culture. And we also want to remind you of following us on social media. And remember that we are having our conference in Manizales, and the Socopi has national, international speakers. Also, we have a speaker that comes from a rural setting, that is Jimmy. In this moment, we still have special fees for students and groups. Help us spread the word, and remember that very soon you will find this webinar and many others in the YouTube channel. Our diplomados are coming. We are starting a new one in August, and you are going to see all this information in our July newsletter. So remember that all this important information for our community is available in our social media. Spread the word, share this information, what you learned today, and remember also to share, to go to the YouTube channel. You are going to find many other things. Juan, thank you so very much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. It was great.
So thank you, everybody, and I'll see you soon.
See you soon. Goodbye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.